Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm grateful that you chose to pick another opportunity to hang out with me by taking out a little bit of your time for looking forward to the posting, looking forward to partnering with us on this episode of Wisdom on Wednesday. And I'm Ray. Before we get started, as usual, I want to thank you for sharing the podcast, for commenting on the podcast, for liking the podcast. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate the scriptures that come to mind when you hear some of the stories I tell. Thank you for the corrections, even when I misquote scripture. So per usual, with this Wisdom on Wednesday, I was asking the Lord to help me to learn more about myself. While I'm learning more about myself, I'm sharing my story with you all. So prayerfully, as I'm getting wiser, looking back at my past, you can glean some of my failures and a few of my successes. So today, we want to focus on wise people must learn to grow into your season. Wise people, we must learn to grow into our season. I was fortunate this past Sunday to be able to wear a suit to church that I'm very proud of, a suit that really means a lot to me. But this suit has a story. This suit has a special meaning in my family. This suit has a special meaning to me, personally taking care of myself and trying to stay fit for my family so I can continue to do the things that God's called me to do in my family and in his church. So I have this gray pinstripe suit that I wore on Sunday. And many people were complimenting this suit about how good it looked, and they appreciate the compliments that I put together, the shirt and the tie and the things of that nature. And all those things were well and good. I'm not trying to sound like I knew I was that deal, but it meant more to me. The reason that this suit was so symbolic and so important to my family is because I got married in that suit 24 and a half years ago, in May of 2000. And that suit was something that was symbolic, that I wore the suit, and I was happy that I moved into a season with that suit, started my life's journey with my wife. And a few years back, I used to post that suit every year and say something sarcastic about how I'm still in shape and how the Lord's blessing me to still wear some clothes some 20 plus years ago. And I had this one person, I won't call them a hater, but I felt like they were a hater, but they actually blessed me. What this person said to me, they said, I didn't want to blow you up on your post because you were getting a lot of compliments, but I want to share something with you. She said, you can fit that suit today, but when you bought that suit, it was too big. I'll say that again. You can fit that suit today, but when you bought that suit, it was too big. You see, friends, I bought that suit in anticipation of the season I was going into with my wife. I didn't know anything about being a husband. And obviously, I didn't know anything about purchasing a suit. I didn't know anything about how the waist was supposed to be tapered and how my jacket was supposed to define the outline of my chest and my shoulders. I didn't know anything about putting something on that would compliment her on the most beautiful day of her life. I was just so excited to move into this new season. I went and got me a suit, and I put that thing on, and I was happy about it. Now, the suit didn't fit me on the day I got married, but I still moved into a new season. The suit started fitting and looking better the more time I spent in the suit. What's the story? Well, the story is, when I first got married, I wasn't ready for the season. When I first entered into this matrimony with my bride, it didn't fit me right. It didn't mean that I was willing to leave or I was willing to give up. It just meant that I was going to wear it a little bit too big until I can actually fit it. Now here 24 and a half years later, we still have work to do, but we fit better. You understand? So my suit was too big and she rented a dress. Many people ask us all the time, what kind of wedding did you guys have? You guys look like you are so excited to be together and things of that nature. I said, well, actually our wedding cost $500. And people asked us what we wanted to get celebrated for our wedding. We said, just bring a meal to the reception, and that's how you can bless us. So we had a $500 wedding because we were moving into a new season, and it didn't matter if we didn't have the money for a vacation. It didn't matter if we didn't have the money for a honeymoon. It didn't matter that we didn't know how to dress for that particular occasion, because the occasion overrode the things that we wore. You understand, wise friend? That sometimes you can be in a season where you feel like the season is too big for you. Sometimes you could be in a season where you feel like you don't fit. Sometimes you can be in a season of your life where it seems like this could be tailored a little bit better to your liking. But can I encourage you today that just because you're in that season of discomfort doesn't mean you won't grow into that season. Just because you're in that season of loneliness doesn't mean that won't be a testimony one day of how you grew in yourself while you were in that season of loneliness, preparing to be a companion of somebody one day. Recognize that just because the season is uncomfortable doesn't mean that the uncomfortable season doesn't have purpose. The uncomfortable season will allow us to grow. It'll allow us to learn to depend and trust in God. The seasons of discomfort, the seasons of uncomfortability, the seasons of wondering, when is my change ever going to come? You understand? Wisdom isn't about everything going your way. Wisdom is learning how to adapt and remain flexible, regardless of what season you're in. You understand? Wise people don't just stay rigid and say this is how it's going to be, but wise people adapt to the seasons as they change. There's going to be seasons where it's going to be winter, seasons where it's going to be summer, seasons of spring and fall. We live in Michigan, so it's fall in the morning and it's summer at night. September is one of those months where the kids can try their best to prepare for school. They'll dress with a hoodie on and they come out of school with shorts on. That's kind of how our lives are, that you can dress and you can prepare and hope for the best. But by the time you get to work, you can be in a whole new season. By the time you come home, you get a phone call. Something can change and your entire season changes. But let me encourage you today, wise friend. Just because you don't fit the season doesn't mean you won't grow into that season. Some of the best clothes that I've ever owned were clothes that were hand-me-downs. And when I got them, they were too long. And when I got them, they were too big. But I eventually grew into those clothes. The best part about it was that I had time to grow. The best gift that I was ever given, that I had the latitude to have something that can cover me, but ultimately I can grow into it and it fit me perfectly. What's that saying about your life and your situation today? There are some things that have you perplexed. There are some things that have you afraid and worrying. But let me encourage you that you're going to grow into that season. Don't stand still and be afraid of what may happen, but make certain that you are active in moving forward regardless of what season you're in. Make certain you stay active in pursuing your goal regardless of what season you're in. You have to know without a shadow of a doubt that trouble won't last always. You have to understand that these things will come to make us strong. You have to understand that when you're in a season of pruning, it seems like many things are being taken away. Many of us have made purchases that we regret. Things get taken away. Sometimes we get into relationships that we regret. Things get taken away. But when you're growing, I like to use the analogy of when you are being potted, planted, and being grown. When you're being grown, you have to be cut every now and then. If you want the plant to be healthy, you've got to cut away all the extra foliage. So be encouraged. Right before a tremendous blessing is on the horizon, it seems like everything's breaking down. It seems like friendships are breaking up. It seems like all those goals, aspirations, those entrepreneurship dreams seem like they're all drying up. But recognize you're being pruned. There are some things being cut away so that you can continue to bloom and you can continue to grow, because this is your season. And just because you've heard that forever and ever, this is your season, doesn't mean just because it's your season, it's going to be a season of productivity. There are some seasons where we have to germinate. There are some seasons where we have to sit still and wait on the Lord. There are some seasons where it may seem like everything around us is dying, but ultimately the seed that's planted in us cannot produce more unless that seed dies. So I want you to be encouraged today. Just because your season may seem daunting, the season may be distant at times, don't be discouraged in this season. Recognize that you're going to grow through all the things you're going through, that you're going to grow despite of how things feel, that you're going to grow. I'm reminded of one of my most favorite scriptures in the Bible, when Jesus asked his disciples, who is it that they say that I am? He said that some think you are this guy. Some people think you are this guy. But Jesus said, who do you all think that I am? What he was actually getting them to say, you guys spend time with me. You guys have heard the word about the Messiah. You guys have heard everything about the Lord coming in the flesh. Who do you say that I am? And that man Peter says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus told him, that didn't come from flesh and bone. That came from my Father who is in heaven. And that encourages me today because Jesus' response to him was this: upon this rock I shall build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now, many people like to argue and fuss about this particular text, but what God has given me in this particular scripture is Jesus is the rock. But ultimately, he says an important part of building his church was going to be on Peter. Now, Peter didn't understand the potential that Jesus saw because Peter ultimately was in a season of making a confession, but his confession would soon be challenged. Just because you're in the right season doesn't mean your season won't be challenged. Do you believe what you're supposed to be doing? Can you continue to press on in spite of how you feel? So Jesus came to Peter and he says, the devil wants to sift you like wheat. He wants to know if your confession about me being the Christ is sincere. And Peter was a denier. He lied. He said that, no, God, I'm going to go with you until the end. I'm going to stay with you. You understand now about seasons? He was in a season that was bigger than him, but he didn't recognize that his failures, that his fumbles, that his missteps was ultimately going to help him depend on God, regardless of what season he was in. So ultimately, he got to a space where people asked him about who Jesus was, and he denied Jesus 3 times. But be encouraged, friends. He was still in the season that God ordained for his life. It took failure before Peter actually preached, and 33,000 people came to Christ because he grew into his season through failure. He grew in his season in a space to where just because he was in the garment of being a preacher, he didn't learn how to depend on his help until he failed. So I want to encourage somebody today who may be embarrassed, who may feel like you're giving up because things aren't going your way. This is still your season, but you're going to have to learn how to wait on God. You're going to have to learn how to grow in your season. You're going to have to learn to stick and stay, regardless of how it looks, regardless of what people think, regardless of what they say. Only what you do for Christ will last. So today, that's my word, friends. Learn to grow into your season. That marriage is not based on how you feel. That marriage is based on the decisions you make to work hard and stay together. That situation in your church, it will pass. People come and people go. Seasons come and seasons go. Don't make a permanent decision on a temporary hurt. You will grow into your season. God bless you today. I pray that this message was encouraging to you. It definitely was encouraging to me. I want you to continue to share. I want you to continue to like, and I want you to continue to post and tag me if you remember. I want to make some new friends too. So I want you to have a great day in the Lord and continue to grow into your season. Take care now. God bless.